so great to be here. I'm so honored to be part of this amazing conference. I hope you've had a great few days already. This is a little bit kind of off course in a way that I'm not really a doctor. You can call me Dr. Phil if you want, but no, I'm not really a doctor, and feel a little bit out of place here, but really honored to be part of this amazing conference. And I've been so inspired by all the sessions. Haven't it been great? Have you enjoyed it? Some amazing people here, and it's truly an honor to be part of it. I've been so inspired by this church and over the years, and have been so encouraged by the teaching coming out of here. So it's pretty amazing to be here. My name is Phil Hyldgaard. I'm originally Danish, from Denmark, not Holland. Some people make that. But from Denmark, and I have been living in Greece, in Europe, for the last 7.5 years. And today I'm the executive director of A21, which is an organization dealing with human trafficking, which is what we're talking about today. But before I get into it, I just wanted to hear who I'm talking to. I wanted to hear who here is already a medical professional. You're practicing some form of medicine. Fantastic. How many people here are medical students, or you want to be a medical professional one day? Awesome. How many here just are interested in human trafficking? Yeah, that should be everyone if you're in this room. That's good. All right. Fantastic. Well, A21 was founded about 8 years ago by an amazing couple called Nick and Christine Kane. And many of you have probably heard Christine Kane speak. And Christine is an incredible communicator. And Chris and Nick, I just wanted to honor them at the start of this, because they're just pioneers in such a great way. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. They are just incredible people, and not just on a platform, but really people who want to empower people to make a difference, which is really the heartbeat behind A21, is to empower people to make a difference in life. And I was studying at Hillsong College in Sydney, Australia, and was coming to the end of my course there, and really pray, God, what do you want to use my life for? How can I be of service to you? And you know, I pray that prayer you should never pray unless you really mean it. Send me wherever you want to send me. I'll go wherever you want me to go. And it seems to be the one prayer that God always answers. You know, we love, as Christians, we love throwing God the ball and saying, hey, I want to do this, I'll do everything for you. But you got to be ready to catch it when it comes back. And in my case, it really came back. Because I found myself in the living room of Nick and Chris, and I'd never met them before. I only knew them from the platform. And one day I was suddenly in their house, and they sit me down and they tell me about human trafficking. And I'm 23 years old at the time, and it's the first time I ever heard about human trafficking. And then they go on to tell me about their dream to start an organization called A21. And I was like, wow, I can't believe you're telling me all this. That's amazing. Thank you for educating me on this issue. Why are you telling me? And then there's, you know, we would like to send you to Greece to start this organization for us. and I was sitting there thinking, I've never been to Greece. I know nothing about human trafficking. I've never started an organization. I'm 23 years old. I'm a single guy. So obviously I was the obvious choice for this role. And but I just knew it was about crazy enough to be God, and had to dive into this and got on this incredible adventure. We really didn't know anything. We didn't know much about how we were going to do something and what we were going to do. We just knew we wanted to help people. We wanted to help victims of human trafficking, specifically sex trafficking at that stage. And we just knew that if you're going to do that, you're going to open a house and you're going to help them in that setting. And so that was kind of our long-term goal. But I got on the ground, and we set up an office. I mean, when I arrived, we didn't have telephones or internet or anything like that. So it was really from the beginning. Yeah, telephones is a really high-level technology. We got that later down the road. But we got started, and basically, within 2 months, we basically took over a shelter from the government. And just had incredible open doors straight away. We got to work directly with the police, anti-trafficking organization within the police in both the capital and the city that we were working in. And things just really happened really quickly. Within 3 months, we had a certified shelter from the government. We had an organization, we had a team, and we got our very first case. And I got to come face to face with the first survivor of trafficking that was in our care. And it changed my life forever. I had heard the stories, I had read the statistics, I'd read the articles, watched the movies, all of that stuff, and I had been very impacted by it, which is why I had left everything and gone there by myself. And then suddenly I came face to face with a person who had actually been a victim of trafficking. You see, Maria here had been trafficked from an Eastern European country into Greece. She had left her country because her dad was sick and she needed to provide for the family, and she had heard there was jobs in Greece, and so she went there. She found a job on her own and started working in this restaurant. Within 2 months, though, she was basically trafficked into the sex industry, and over the course of 3 years, she was trafficked between 11 different brothels in Athens. And she testified to us how she had been servicing up to 40 men a day. And she was at the end of her rope after 3 years. She was like, either I'm going to commit suicide, as many of them do, or I'm going to try one more time to escape. And she was so afraid of the police because often traffickers use various techniques to show these girls or victims that you cannot trust the police, that you cannot work with them because they work for us as traffickers. They work for the traffickers. And so she was so afraid, but she ran away and she managed to escape, and she got to the police, and thankfully she ended up in a good police station. And these police officers put her in a prison cell for 3 days while she testified because they had nowhere else to put her. And once they were done with her and they had gotten their testimony, which is what they cared about so that they could run a prosecution case against this trafficker, they said, well, you should go to this city. There's this group called A21, and they will help you. So the police put her on a bus by herself in the middle of the night for 9 hours, and she arrived in the city where we were. And I was there with 2 of my colleagues, female colleagues, and I was the driver that night and the security guy. And we were going to pick up this girl, and we could just see her coming out of this bus, and she was terrified. She hadn't been eating or sleeping for 3 days. She was sure when she saw us that the police had just sold her to another trafficker. And I remember her staring at me and looking down and talking to my colleagues saying, what is he doing here? Who is he? Why is he here? And they were trying to calm her down. It's okay, he's here to help, he's a good guy. And long story short, she came into our care, and a couple of months later, it was amazing to see the transformation that started taking place in her life. And just within a couple of months, we were sitting around a dinner table and with a whole group of us, and she started to thank us for what we had done for her, how we had helped her. And she thanked everyone, and then she came to me, and I was like the only guy in the room. And so she said, and Phil is really nice, but he's not a man. And I really struggled with that one. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, of course I'm a man, I'm definitely a man. Didn't really get the answer that night, but basically, a couple of days later, our staff was talking to her about this and what she meant by that. And basically, her whole life, she had grown up in an abusive situation. And that every man that she had ever encountered in her life had abused her, including her family members, including friends, people in her life. Every man had represented an abuser in her life. And therefore, since I looked like a man, I couldn't be a man because man equaled an abuser. And since I wasn't abusing her, surely I could not be a man. I must be something else. And that breaks your heart forever when you come face to face with that. I found out something else. And that was that Maria was born 2 days after me. On the same year, in the same month, 2 days apart. The exact season where I pursued my dream to go and study at college in Australia and do what I wanted to do, she was trafficked. She was sold, and she was abused. And in the same 3-year period that I was studying and living the dream, as we say, she was enslaved and abused on a daily basis. And at the moment where I got in a position to do something to help people, that's when she was rescued. And I realized something. I grew up in such a nice family, in a Christian home. I've been so blessed my whole life to be part of being in a nice family where nothing ever happened. I mean, when I think of injustice growing up, I'm thinking of having to go to bed at 9 p.m. And I realized that I had done nothing to deserve growing up in that family. I had done nothing to deserve growing up in my home country. And the same way, Maria had done nothing to deserve growing up in her situation, in her family, in that poor situation, in that abusive home. She had done nothing to deserve to get trafficked. So in a way, our lives connected. And I realized that there is one thing in common between injustice and freedom, and that is that it's undeserved. The question is, what will we do with our freedom? What will we use our freedom for? You see, the thing is, Maria is just one out of millions of people enslaved today. In fact, there are more slaves today than there's ever been in the history of the world. There's another person falling victim of human trafficking every 30 seconds. And the average age is just 12 years old. This influences every single country in the world has slavery, documented slavery today in 2016. Just to put some of these numbers into perspective, there's believed to be somewhere between 21 to 36 million people enslaved today. In the state of Texas, it's about 27 million people. Is that right? Yes. In the whole country of Australia, there's 23 million people. I mean, if you combine some of the famous cities in the world, it takes a lot to get to that amount of people that are enslaved right in this moment. Every single second, every single 30 seconds, another person falls victim. That's 2 people a minute. That's 120 an hour. In this time that we talk here, 100 people would have been trafficked. In the time that you're part of this conference, over 2,000 people would have been enslaved. Meanwhile, just 1% of those victims are rescued. And in Eastern Europe specifically, up to 80% of those rescued, the 1%, are trafficked again. Because there is no help, there is no support, and they go back to the same horrible situation that they came out of. And even worse, in Europe at the moment, we're seeing a 0.001% conviction rate on human traffickers. 1 in 100,000. And that is not a little random statistic, that is a United Nations statistic. 1 in 100,000 traffickers convicted of human trafficking. So you have this crazy flip of a scale where we have a low-risk crime with a massive profit. How big a profit? $150 billion a year is made on human trafficking. To put that into perspective, the entire country of Hungary has a GDP of $133 billion a year. Human trafficking is bigger than that. To put it in another context, our response to actually fighting this crime is incredibly little. Globally, the world spends $100 billion a year on fighting illegal drugs. But we are spending, at the moment, globally, $124 million on fighting human trafficking. $124 million. That's less than the movie Taken made just in the US alone. It's being spent on ending this crime, which is also the fastest growing organized crime in the world. And And what I'm trying to get across to you here is that human trafficking exists because it is a business. It is run by organized crime groups, and the only purpose of organized crime is one thing: making a profit. You know, when we hear about the horrible stories of human trafficking, we shake our heads and we cannot understand how people can do this to other people. But what is the root of all evil? The love of money. Not money, but the love of money. And what happens is that you have people getting full of greed, and they'll do anything to make a profit. And as you can see, it's a very profitable crime to get involved with. A lucrative crime that has very low risk. But what we have to understand is that human trafficking is a business. And the foundation of any business in the world, there's two key things: supply and demand. If I want to start a coffee shop, I got to find a supply of coffee, and I got to find a demand for coffee. Pretty easy to do, the latter. In the same way, with human trafficking, it runs as a business, and there is a supply and there is a demand that runs this business. The supply in human trafficking is vulnerable people. Vulnerable people. And lots of things make people vulnerable. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. The demand that runs and drives this business is unfortunately us. We are responsible for human trafficking's growth. Because if there were no demand, there would be no supply. See, if supply is vulnerable people, there will always be vulnerable people in the world. But if we can defeat a demand on trafficking, then we can really see an end to it. Now, what is the demand? Well, it can be a lot of things here. I'm going to talk about it in a moment. But I want to just look at vulnerability. One of the biggest vulnerability factors in the world is poverty. Poverty makes people desperate. It makes them seek for opportunities. It makes them take risks and chances. How many people have watched here the movie Taken? Yeah, very popular movie. Lots of people have seen it, and I think it's fantastic. I mean, it's especially brought a lot of men into the understanding of what human trafficking is, or at least have an understanding of the basics. What we see in that movie, though, has really made a lot of people scared of traveling from the West. And that's not really the case. I would say maybe Taken features a tiny little bracket of what human trafficking is. What we have to understand is, if I'm going to take someone away from their life, and I'm going to get them to do something they don't want to do in a public setting, you really got to pick specific people. You really got to be smart about who you pick. And what we have to understand is that traffickers, they pick vulnerable people that are not going to be missed, that no one is going to look for. If an American person goes missing anywhere in the world, the whole world will know about it tomorrow. But thousands of people go missing every single day, and we never hear anything about it. So traffickers pick vulnerable people who are not going to be missed. And here is a picture from Bulgaria, which is an Eastern European country. It's an EU country. It's part of the European Union. And this is the street of a village where little children, little girls here, are growing up in poverty. But they are not in Africa, where they are far away from opportunity. These guys are a bus ride from Paris. And they can get on a bus for $20 to $50 US, and they can be in a capital city in Europe where it's full of wealth and where there's opportunity. And so they are in so close proximity to opportunity. What you can see in this image projected is that this whole village has electricity. But they also have a satellite dish each. This is an interesting thing. But every single little shack here actually has a TV. And every single shack has a satellite dish. In other words, they can go into their house and they can see you and I's life. They can watch the same TV shows that we can see, which portrays our lifestyle. And then they can walk outside their door, and they have the sewage running down their street. The contrast is insane. So this creates this discontent where I can see a better life, I have exposure to a better life, but my own life is very different. And that creates this discontent about my situation, and I want to get away from this. So any traffickers coming into this little community here and offering an opportunity to make money, you're going to jump on it. you're going to go for it. In countries in Eastern Europe, such as Moldova, in some villages, up to 70% of females have been trafficked, have been taken and moved into the West. Another vulnerability group at the moment is refugees. You might have heard about these. I don't know in what capacity and what your thoughts are about refugees, but reality is that these are the most vulnerable people in the world today. In the last 18 months, in Europe alone, Europol, which is the European Interpol, believes that 10,000 children has disappeared, have been lost. 10,000 children in a year and a half, just from refugees. We don't know where they are, unaccompanied minors. We have no idea who they are. There's no register for them, and anything could have happened to them. We don't know. Traffickers prey on vulnerable people who are not going to be missed. They have no identity, no one is looking for them, no one is going to miss them. And they're moving through Europe away from their home that they had left behind that was bombed. And they're looking for an opportunity for a better life. Here in the US, human trafficking is a big reality. What might surprise some people is that 80% of victims in the US are locals. They are domestic. They are Americans. 80% of all victims in this country do not come from another country. They grow up in the US. They are here, and they are often the runaways, the children that grow up in a foster care system or come out of broken homes. And they're groomed into this industry by pimps and traffickers, and over time enslaved. What drives some of this is demand. And demand can be described in many ways, but I'll talk about two things: demand for labor and demand for sex. Here is some pictures of examples of what that can be. It's a little bit hard to see some of them. Up here is a place where people were sleeping, and this is not mattresses, this is wooden pallets with a sheet on it, where they were asked to sleep, and is inside this catacomb tent in the middle of summer, which is 40 plus degrees Celsius, which would be over 100 degrees to sleep in these places here, where they are not paid anything, and they work 16-hour days in the fields, picking fruit, picking strawberries that we would be eating across Europe. No one knows. Here is a picture from our social workers working in Thailand. 2 young girls, 5 years old, standing on the street in the capital of, this is in a city just below Bangkok, which is the capital for pedophilism in the world. And here, this city is full of pedophiles, and these 4 to 5-year-old little girls are standing on the street, dancing in barely any clothes, completely unprotected, and no one is there. Construction worker. Here I have fishing boats full of Thai victims who are trafficked into the fishing industry and held captive on fishing boats around the world. We don't hear the stories, but we eat their fish. We wear their clothes. We want their cheap clothing. We want the nice chocolate, the good coffee, but we don't want to ask how that came into our hands. As long as we can get a good sale, but we don't wonder why this item is so cheap. And how come this shirt costs 1/5 of that other shirt? Surely it can't just be the pattern. The demand for trafficking is what drives this crime and injustice. And we have to be responsible for what we do and our place in that. There's a great website called slaveryfootprint.org. Slavery Footprint. You can Google that after this. And you can go in and do a test and see how many slaves are working for you. You should check that out. Another big issue is sex trafficking. Of all the slaves in the world, 80% are women and children. Majority are trafficked and exploited in a sexual way. Demand for sex is massive. The pornography industry is believed to be somewhere between $60 to $100 billion globally. And it grows all the time. In countries like Greece or in many other countries where prostitution is legal, it's part of society, it's even socially accepted. In Greece, where we are working, where our offices, one of our offices are, 60 to 70% of men use prostitution on a regular basis. On a regular basis. Not have tried it, are using it on a regular basis. Married men, 50%. It's part of society, it's part of growing up. In Germany, a country of about 80 million people, there's believed to be 1 million purchases of sex, legal purchases of sex a day. 1 million that are taxed and part of the country. I'm going to move along because I'm taking too much time. But A21 is an organization that started 8 years ago. And today, we're working across the globe in 10 different countries. Started out of that location in Greece, and we've basically grown it across the world. It's a really bright image, so those locations are not in the water. There is land there. But yeah, there you go. And A21 is taking a comprehensive approach to fighting human trafficking, according to what's known as the 4 Ps. And this is an internationally recognized model for protecting the victims, providing prevention and awareness, prosecuting the traffickers, and working in partnership with the community. And I wanted to just highlight a couple of things. I thought about this group that I was speaking to today, and there's no way that I could cover all the work of A21, and I would bore you to death as well. But I just wanted to cover a couple of things for people here who may be thinking about getting involved in fighting human trafficking, maybe starting an organization or wanting to help somehow. And I just try to think about some things that I wanted to highlight to you. And one of them is just the power of partnership in this. We as an organization believes in partnership in a great way. And I believe that one of the key things with partnership is that partnership has to be a win-win. And why am I talking about this? Because I've seen so many groups who go out there and they're about making it a win for themselves. But reality is that Jesus came to serve and not to be served. And for us as Christians, we have to carry that DNA with us when we go into the world. That we are here to serve the community and not to be served. And so our agenda should not be an agenda to promote ourselves, but to promote the cause that we are fighting for. And I just wanted to encourage you in going into this to carry that heart with you. This picture here is an example of that, where so many organizations that I have met have gone out and criticized. They're criticizing the government. They're criticizing the police for not doing enough. And is the police doing enough? Of course not. Is the government doing enough? Of course not. But I can either criticize the system or I can work with the system. And I believe that for human trafficking to end, the system has to change. But to change the system, we have to work with the system, not against the system. And here is one small example, but one of the first things we did going into a new country was to set up an honor event where we invited everyone from government, in the police sector. This is a public prosecutor standing next to me here. And we honored them for the work that they're doing in fighting human trafficking. And we gave them awards, we gave them flowers, we gave them diplomas printed out of a Word document. And we did, it was so special, you know. But I have the chief of police, I have this public prosecutor, I have people working with embassies, and they are in tears because all they've ever had is criticism on what they're doing or what they're not doing. And here we can be honoring their work. And that opens so many doors for us to have influence with them. And, you know, I really believe that we got to work with the system to change the system. You know, one of the things we wanted to do, we wanted to see the police do more in our country. And we asked ourselves, why would they? Why would they work with us? Why would they listen to us? How could I have a voice into their life? And so one of the things that we've been doing over the last few years is coming in and serving the police with training. And we actually didn't go in and say, hey, let me tell you about what I can do for you. I went in and asked, what would you like me to do for you? How can I serve you as the police? And we got wide open doors to teach the police across all of Greece, any location we want. We can now say we want to train people in this region. They will get a letter from the headquarters in the capital. They will order that station to listen to us and bring their police officers there in their work hours and go through the training. And we've been able to do this training that's basically has seen a response of over 75% have physically stood up from the training, gone to a table, put their name down, and said, I want to be in touch with this work, and they're giving me their personal email and personal mobile phone number to keep them in touch with this and actually be activated. Now, I believe in training identifiers, and I see medical professionals as one of the key elements in that. And that's why over the last year, we have started training medical professionals, doctors, nurses across Greece and the UK. And we are currently working on a curriculum that we want to publish and get out there that maybe you could use and benefit from as well, if you want to. Actually, if you have interest in any of that, I would love for you to put your name down over here so we could let you know when that comes out. If you have an interest, we have a little table over here and a little list that you could put that down on. I also have a brochure with me, a little flyer that actually gives you just the basic signs of what to look for. Because so many of our victims that have come through the care of A21 have actually been through has been in a hospital or has been seeing a doctor while they were a victim. But they were so afraid and so fearful and they were never asked. And they left that clinic or that room a victim still. And we want to make sure that does not happen. And you as a medical professional really have the opportunity through your own profession to come across victims of trafficking, and you can respond to that. And I would strongly, strongly encourage you to get this little flyer with you, especially if you're practicing in any way. The other thing I would strongly, strongly encourage you to is to write down the hotline number for the US. There's a nationwide hotline number that you can call 24/7. You can report on anonymously. A21 runs a similar number like this in Bulgaria, in Greece, in South Africa, and about to start one in Australia as well. And this number is also on the flyer. I'm going to move along because I'm running out of time. Another resource that's available is actually going into schools. But I wanted to just quickly finish by just talking about care programs. And I have talked way too long, so we're not going to have a lot of time for this one. But I know a lot of people, they're thinking we got to just go out and start a home for victims. And that's how we fought. But I just wanted to share my experience with you today a little bit in that, and just encourage everyone who really has a heart to do some form of care programs or homes for victims of trafficking, is to just do not rush into it. You are here dealing with some of the most broken people in the world. I mean, if you start thinking about forms of abuse that can occur to a person, victims of trafficking are likely to have a massive range of those in one person. And we got to be extremely careful how we approach that and ensure that we're not causing more damage than good. We have learned that there is no box that fits all, that every individual really needs a unique tailored program. And so we try to tailor that. But what's been really important for us is that we want to create a program that puts value on people. And so that's really a core of what we're about. We want to see people valued. It's the first thing that is removed from a victim, and it's the first thing we want to bring back. And so when I say that, I don't just say that as that's a nice thing to say, we want to put value back. I'm saying that comes through everything that we do. When it comes to our facilities, I want to show you a couple of pictures here. When it comes to our homes, they got to communicate that message of value to a person. It's got to be a beautiful environment. When I talk to my team, that needs to come out of their language. When it comes to the clothes that we give them, and we don't give them second-hand clothes, but we give them new things, new clothes that communicates value. That we always, in everything that we do, we communicate that they have value, that they are precious to us, and that they matter. I don't have time to talk through all these programs, but obviously we're doing everything we can to take a person through, not just the shelter, because what we've seen is that shelters are awesome for a short term, but for long term, we've really got to see people being independent. And so A21 works to rehabilitate and restore people from the point of rescue all the way through to complete independence. And I mean independent financially, socially, in their education, from their trauma, everything. And that means setting up businesses, that means setting up work opportunities, taking them through educational programs, and actually really putting them on their own 2 feet to stand on their own 2 feet. We have no interest in institutionalizing people. We want to see them independent and living the life that God has called them to live. Maybe I can just quickly finish with this video, and then we're going to have some questions. Is that okay? Yes. Maybe a question before? Yes.
When they call that national hotline,
yes.
who do they talk to and what happens to them? If someone here in Texas calls that national hotline, who do they talk to and what do they tell them to do?
Yeah, this particular hotline is run by an organization called the Polaris Project, and they're trained specifically for human trafficking to deal with these cases. And obviously, if it's an emergency situation, they will refer them straight to an emergency service, which will be law enforcement in that situation. But sometimes it's not an emergency situation. It could also just be someone calling and reporting on what they've seen. Like, for example, you walking down the street seeing something of suspicion. That matters to them, and it may not matter if you call 911 with that information. So this is a hotline that is focused on human trafficking. And so anything that you see, anything that you might be aware of, could play a part in building a case that could see a rescue take place. Yeah. It's obviously a complex situation, but yeah, that's kind of the main thing. Okay, I'm going to show this video, and then we're going to ask some more questions, okay?
I had a cousin. I didn't actually know what she was doing for a living, but she had a friend who had a friend that was going to get us a job in Greece. When we got there, the only job they offered us was too dirty to name it. I could see the cameras and they would lock the doors. You couldn't go. They would find us.
It's so easy to get overwhelmed by the statistics and the enormity of the problem. You can actually start to feel like the part you play isn't big enough or that it doesn't really matter. But we believe that every one survivor we help matters significantly.
We would be in the club every night. Short skirts, not much clothes. And we had to smile. Always tried to smile. Had to act as if we liked it. Sometimes feel ashamed. I would see client after client, not much break, and would have to see another client.
We have undertaken quite a challenge in taking on human trafficking on a global scale. But if not us, then who? And with another person falling victim of human trafficking every 30 seconds, if you and I don't fight this now, then when? A21 is actively working around the world to provide a comprehensive response to human trafficking. From gathering intelligence that leads to rescue, to protecting and caring for survivors, to prosecuting traffickers, to prevention and global awareness. Somewhere around the globe, A21 is always at work.
I remember when I met someone from A21. They came to police station. We got to the shelter and I knew then I was okay.
That's why our aftercare program is uniquely tailored to set up each survivor for a win and see them reach the fullness of their dreams.
At the shelter, we were offered everything that we needed. And Through the time I was there, I have learned much about who I am and what I want. I know I wanted to study psychology and help others because I was helped. The people at the H21 shelter, they made me feel safe. They never judged me. They believed in me.
The fact is that without this kind of support, statistics show that 80% are re-trafficked into slavery. That's why a holistic approach to aftercare is so crucial. When we're able to walk with the survivor through their restoration journey and give them the professional care that they need, they're much more likely to testify in court against their traffickers and see convictions take place. Because of this, we've seen dozens of traffickers sentenced to prison, removing them from the ability to traffic others. You see, aftercare has a ripple effect.
Every effort to fight human trafficking and to help those who have become victims matters. And just as we believe that every one of the survivors that we help matters, we believe that every one of those that come alongside us in this fight against human trafficking matters. So together, we can make a significant difference in the lives of survivors just like Anna. Join us. Sponsor freedom today.
Awesome. Okay. I promised I would finish after this video, but we're obviously doing a lot with the refugees, and there's something called Walk for Freedom here in October that you might want to be part of and check out as well. Otherwise, you can find us more at the booth. But let me answer some questions, because I saw a bunch of hands before. So, the demand, yes. A21 is involved in a campaign called It's a Penalty, which is specifically targeting sports events around the world. Last year, we were part of the World Cup in soccer in Brazil, and we partnered with a lot of celebrities on that to put a big profile on, including a lot of the sportsmen themselves. We also had an ad on British Airways flights to Brazil that basically warned them about getting involved in it and how they could be prosecuted in their home country. So there you're targeting the buyers of sex. So this campaign is something that we're going to be rolling out in more and more countries, and will be involved in some of the major sports events. So that's kind of our first step in regards to demand. It's a challenging one because we want to see people come alongside the campaign and not just be offended and step away. And so you're trying to find a way to engage with that community without pushing them away, if that makes sense. So yeah, demand is a massive challenge to address, but awareness is a big part of that. Yes? What's the biggest measures to prevent trafficking? That's I guess a challenging question, because it would be very much in the context of the country and what the need is in each country. And the other thing is the prevention is very hard to measure impact of. You know, you bring in a message out there. But I have to believe that, you know, this injustice has grown in darkness, and like myself, I had no clue about human trafficking. I wonder how many people here has found out about human trafficking in the last 10 years? Yeah, anyone knew about human trafficking before 10 years ago? Right, 5, 6 people, okay? Well done, guys. I was following the news, I went to school, and I didn't know. I'd heard about it, but I didn't know about it, you know what I mean? And so if we can all, in this room, take what we heard today and use our platform to talk about it, I have to believe that as the world becomes aware of this situation, that we will lower the demand for it. And I do believe that there is a power in all of us using our voice. And I don't think one campaign or one event is going to do that. It has to be a consistent thing. And that's also part of why we have developed this curriculum for schools, is that we actually educating the next generation, and that they do not grow up like us in this room, not knowing when they were young, and grow up to either become a victim or to become part of the problem, but to be part of the solution. And so we actually have a curriculum for high schools that is Common Core approved for the state of Texas, and that can go into high school. So that's something you want to help promote and get and use, take advantage of, go for it. It's available at our booth on our website. But so I think it's going to be a systematic education of the next generation ultimately. Yeah.
Well, first I just want to commend you guys on this project, but also just taking a real strength-based focus with working with government. I'm actually from the New York area where they just recently, I wouldn't say maybe the last 2 years, rolled out something for the Office of Children and Family Services where they work specifically with communities, organizations, preventive providers, working on what they call a rapid response. And so I work with, I'm the clinical director over a couple of therapists that work in the community, but we're finding that there's a lot of focus on young girls and adolescent females, but not so much on adolescent males and boys. And I just was curious just about what the percentage that you guys are saying of the males or the adolescent boys that are coming in to here.
Okay, so the question is in regards to boys that are being exploited sexually.
Right, and that you're able to have seen or observed.
It's quite low. I mean, we are not engaged with minors in the U.S. In that sense. Here, our aftercare in the U.S. is still at an early stage, developing that. So it's primarily focused on females of age, victims of sex slavery. I don't know the numbers on that, but I think the reason for it is that it has not it's not as big, and so it's focused on the biggest issue first. I'm not discrediting that. I recognize the need for it, but I think that's the natural thing that's happened. And so, is there a need for that? Yeah, absolutely. I don't know the numbers exactly, and I actually don't think that anyone does. Yeah. So there was a question here before. Yes? You mean legalizing prostitution? Yeah. I don't really want to get into the political discussion about legalizing prostitution versus illegalizing it, because I think politics in that can split a room often. What I will say is that I think one thing that we can all agree on in this room is that slavery is wrong, and it does not belong in our country. And so anything that promotes or encourages or creates an avenue for slavery to be there, we should be very careful to regulate or shut down. And my question in regards to prostitution is, when something is legal and available, it will grow. If coffee is made illegal tomorrow, a lot of people are going to be upset. But there will be sold less coffee than there were today, because it's not as available as it was before when it was legal. Does that make sense? That would be my very simple reasoning for it. Does that answer your question? Absolutely. And there always is. Whether it's legal or illegal, you always have a black market. And at the end of the day, and we're gonna finish here, but at the end of the day, slavery is is exploiting a person to do something they don't want to do. So I think we misunderstand the concept in that the world has kind of educated us in a way that we can believe that it's a choice, or that someone decides that on a normal day and they were never involved, and then one day they decide to be involved with it. What we've experienced is that there's a process in which traffickers take people and they turn them into prostitutes, what we would recognize as prostitutes in the public domain. It's a little bit like, this is a really bad example, a little bit like buying a dog. You go and buy a puppy and you want to take it to the public park. You want to take the leash off and let it run free, but you want to be in control of it. You want it to know you want it to be your dog, right? So you don't go to the park on day one. You take it home with you. Because you know if you go to the park and take the leash off, it's going to run away and you're never going to see it again. So this dog has been born free with a free spirit, and it's his own being. And you want it to behave in a certain way. So you take it home to your house, you lock the doors, and you train it who its master is. You train it what its name is, and what to do when you say, come, sit, fetch, don't pee on the floor. And when you are comfortable and confident that it knows your voice, that it knows its name, and it knows your command, and it will follow it, then you take it to the park. And so I don't believe that there is such thing as from free person to public prostitution in one day. I believe there's a journey that takes place in the dark that we do not see and that we are not aware of. What is choice in the end? What is choice? If I'm in Africa and I'm thirsty, I have the choice between starving or drinking from a mud hole. If I'm thirsty in America, I can go to Walmart and I have 2,000 options. My choice is still the same, but is it a choice or is it survival? And sometimes I think we confuse the two. All right, we're going to have to finish here. Talk too much, but thank you so much for being part of this session.